Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Zechariah, the first chapter. And Zechariah, around this time, just a bit of context, as we went through the book of Haggai, Zechariah is also one of the prophets, along with Haggai, that the Lord had put the spirit on, right? So they were contemporaries with Zerubbabel and Joshua and so on and so forth. And during this time, during the reign of Darius, the Lord put the spirit upon them to prophesy right onto Jerusalem, onto Jake, and exhort them through the spirit of the Lord to continue the building until eventually we were able to complete the rebuilding of the second temple. Okay, so getting into it, as you can see, a call to repentance. Now, the book of Zechariah, the book of Haggai was pretty much about 2 chapters, and it mainly dealt with the message that the Lord was giving Israel concerning how he's going to be with them, and after their transgression, he was still going to have mercy. But in the book of Zechariah, you have a mix of these things, right? There are chapters in here where Zechariah is actively exhorting them, and then there's also parts in there where the Zechariah goes into these visions that he receives concerning Israel. Okay, prophetic ones, and some dark sayings in there as well. Okay, so anyway, this is the book of Zechariah, chapter 1, verse 1. In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord Yahweh unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo the prophet, saying, The Lord Yahweh hath been sore displeased with your fathers. Therefore say thou unto them, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye unto me, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. So the message that the Lord brought to Zechariah here was to say that, look, your forefathers, right, the ones that committed all this iniquity and transgression, have really, made the Lord displeased. Okay, but here for you got to turn back to the Lord. You got to leave off the ways, the wicked things that your forefathers did, and repent. And when you turn to the Lord, he will turn to you. In other words, he would turn those hard times and those curses to blessings. Okay. Verse 4, Be ye not as your fathers, unto whom the former prophets have cried, saying, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, Turn ye now from your evil ways, and from your evil doings. But they did not hear, nor hearken unto me, saith the Lord. Yeah, so when you go back, even during the time of Jeremiah, during the time of Jonah, the time of Hosea, all the different prophets, Amos, right, prophesying onto Israel concerning, and even the ones who don't have, at least we don't have their books per se, they prophesied onto Israel concerning the wicked things they were doing, concerning how the Lord was against them and how they had to repent, but they didn't listen. Instead, they sought the lives of these prophets to put them to death. So here the Lord is saying, here, turn from those ways, okay? Don't be like your forefathers that were disobedient. Verse 5, Your fathers, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my statutes, which I commanded my servants the prophets, did they not take hold of your fathers? See, so your forefathers, guess what? They came and went. The prophets that prophesied unto them, they came and went. But the words, the things that I had told those prophets to say unto them, guess what? They took hold of your fathers. Those words came to pass, even after the prophets were no more, meaning like whoever it was that had prophesied, maybe they died or whatever the case is, the word of the Lord. And this is why the scriptures tell us here in the book of Isaiah, the 55th chapter, I believe it's 55 and 8, or really 55 and 55 and 11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. And that process is the Most High gives the word, but we on the earth, as the mouthpieces of the Lord, are the ones that make it public. So when the prophets come and they come in the name of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai and they prophesy, they're speaking the words of the Lord. So as it says here, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void. What that means is the word of the Lord is not going to come back to him without having accomplished whatever he has set it to accomplish. But it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. See? And that's what the Lord is emphasizing here. Saying, guess what? Your forefathers in their wickedness, they died. The prophets that prophesied against them, they died. But the words and the statutes that the prophets prophesied in my name, they came to pass. And they returned and said, like as the Lord Yahweh of hosts thought to do unto us, according to our ways and according to our doings, so hath he dealt with us. So when Zechariah told them these things, they had to acknowledge it and say, yeah, that's true. You know, just as the Lord said it would happen to us, that's exactly what he did. Verse 7. Upon the 24th day of the 11th month, which is in the month Sebat. Now, in here, the first one was during the in the 8th month, so it doesn't really specify the day, but sometime after that, as you can see here, it says, in the 2nd year of Darius came the word of the Lord Yahweh unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo the prophet, saying, I saw by night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom, and behind him were their red horses, speckled and white. Then said I, O my Lord, what are these? And the angel that talked with me said unto me, I will shew thee what these be. So pretty much in this vision that Zechariah received, he sees a man upon a red horse, and then he sees, as it says here, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom. And behind him, now when you look this up in another translation, when it deals with the bottom, I believe one of them, mentions it as being like some form of a valley or a low land. Okay. But nevertheless, he's seeing this vision, right, of this man upon a red horse. And then he's also seeing these other red horses, as it says, speckled and white, that are round about. And he's wondering, what is this? What's going on here? So the angel in Zechariah's vision that is talking to him here basically says, all right, I'm going to explain it to you. Verse 10. And the man that stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, These are they whom the Lord Yahweh hath sent to walk to and fro through the earth. And they answered the angel of the Lord that stood among the myrtle trees and said, We have walked to and fro through the earth, and behold, all the earth sitteth still and is at rest. Now keep in mind that this is a vision that Zechariah is seeing. And so in this vision, there are the things that you see, and most of the time in your visions are representative of other things. So these of course the angels that he saw, that was clear, that was plain. But these red horses here that he saw, that were walking to and fro in the earth, and pretty much came back to report in verse 11 to this angel that was among the myrtle trees. These were angels, okay, and they were going through the earth doing their job. That's why you see in the top here, patrol of the earth. So just as you have Satan, which is also an angel on the left hand side, as the scriptures say, that goeth about throughout the earth looking for whom he may devour, you also have other angels, and sometimes we'll see them, right? When you see the chariot, if you notice, sometimes there are chariots that are stationary, but other times there are chariots that are moving. Those chariots that are moving, they're not just, moving just for fun, just to come and, put on a show for you. But most of the time, they're doing something the Lord sent them to do. They're probably going from one area to another, because they are the eyes of the Lord, and they gather information and they report back to the Lord. What's one example? Let's go here to the book of Genesis, and let's see. And in this example, this is a more extreme case of it, but let's see. Yeah, Genesis, the 18th chapter. Yeah, so this is Genesis, the 18th chapter, and in this chapter, this is when the angels, the three angels, came on their way to Sodom and Gomorrah. Right, I believe it was three of them, if I'm not mistaken, but we're in the chapter so we can see. Let's see. All right, we'll start at verse 11. But they were on their way to Sodom and Gomorrah, right, and those cities over there, and they had this encounter with Abraham. Now, I'm bringing this out to prove the point of the angels going to and fro on the earth, basically upon the commandment of the Lord to either, patrol or to do a certain job, or whatever the case is. Now, in the case of the book of Zechariah, they were patrolling. They were going through, because that was their job. So Genesis 18 and 11, now Abraham and Sarah were old and stricken in years, or stricken in age. And it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am old. Now this is after the angels had come to them. And when it says it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women, it means that she was now past the age of, I guess you would think of like menopause, for example, right? Past the age of having that heat and ultimately that ability to even have children. Okay. Now let me actually go up a bit. I want to get the count of these men here. Yeah, so there were three men. Yeah, lo, three men stood by him. Cool. So let's go back down. And let's keep reading. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, because they had told her she would have a child. Right? So therefore Sarah laughed. Where are we at? Within herself, saying, After I am waxing old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? Now keep in mind, right, that I guess I got to go up a little bit to give a bit of context. At this point in time, right, when you deal with the ancient world, and especially around the time of Abraham, when it talks about, for example, the tent, right, that they dwelt in, this wasn't like your tents that you would take on a camping trip. These were much bigger tents that you could actually dwell in, and they were divided. Okay, you had like the doors and everything. They were divided. If you've watched shows like even like Game of Thrones, right, or the show like Vikings, when they're camping in certain areas, they build that giant tent like looking area where they would stay. So you can imagine something like this. And what would happen is when you had visitors, because the tents were divided, almost like having different rooms, the wife would not be out there in the open where the other men and the visitors were. She would be in the back somewhere. And so that was the case here. Sarah was behind the tent, but she was listening to the conversation that was being had by Abraham and the three angels. And so when the angel said to Abraham, right, in verse 10, and he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. Now, keeping this on a surface level, the point here is the angel was saying that Sarah was going to have a son. In this case, he was referring to Isaac. Okay, now we've done lessons going into what it means about why he said he would return unto him according to the time of life. But in this lesson, I'm going to just focus on the high level understanding here. Okay. So it says here, and that was because that angel who said that was the one that was going to return as the son of Isaac, or the son of Abraham, being Isaac. So it says, Sarah thy wife shall have a son, and Sarah heard it in the tent's door, which was behind him. So she was in the back. Now Abraham and Sarah, now I want to see if maybe I can pull up, let's see, tent in Bible times. Let's see if we can get, okay. We could rock with something like this. We could rock a little something like this. So you can see here are a few depictions, right, of some tents here. Okay, you have some like this. So these are pretty sizable, right? And yeah, here's another one. They're pretty sizable. and they're portable as well. So you could pack them up, carry them, you know, and they were divided by the doors were really just like, a flap, right, that you would go through. Um, so yeah, these are some images here just to put an idea, a visual into your head, okay? And they would use like the different sticks to hold it up, the different nails to nail it down, and different material to, to make it habitable, right? So going back to Genesis, Sarah's listening here. Verse 11. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord Yahweh said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? So can you imagine this, right? He's having a conversation with them, and the angel says this to Abraham, and then the angel says, why is Sarah laughing about that? And Abraham is like, huh? Right? I mean, and it just further goes to show, obviously, they were angels, right? Because Sarah wasn't even around here. She was in the back. And it says she laughed within herself. So it's not like she was busting out laughing so everybody can hear it. See, back then, women had a shamefacedness about themselves. Verse 14, is there anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. So probably when she heard that, she probably maybe came out, or even from the behind there, just denied it, saying, no, well, I wasn't laughing. And the angel said, no, you did laugh. It says, and the men rose up from thence and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. So the Lord was here, thinking, should he reveal to Abraham why he sent these men here? For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, and the Lord Yahweh, or that the Lord Yahweh may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. And the Lord said, now here's the part, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous. Now let's look into the word cry here. Okay, we have the word za'ik, and it says here outcry, cry of distress, clamor, shriek. And this is just going into the basically the level of wickedness that was going on in that land had now come up to a point where the Lord had to come and address it, right? So as he says here, the sin is very grievous. I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which has come unto me. And if not, I will know. See, so these men, right? These men that were sent, right? Let me read verse 22. And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom. But Abraham stood yet before the Lord. See, so these men, which were angels, and because as you keep reading in the story of Genesis, you'll find out what they actually did to Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring cities. But they went there because they were sent to go through the earth and to go and examine to see, is the report, the Lord is saying, is the report that I'm getting of this wickedness going on in this area really the case? So he sent those angels to go there. And if that was the case, then they were to destroy it. Okay. And that's just an example. Like I mentioned, this is more of a more extreme example, but still an example nonetheless of similar to how in the book of Zechariah, you had these angels, which were likened here in this vision to red horses that went to and fro in the earth. Okay. And here in verse 11, they returned back to the man, the angel that was among the myrtle trees, and they gave their report, right? We have walked to and fro through the earth, and behold, all the earth standeth still and is at rest. Verse 12, then the angel of the Lord Yahweh answered and said, O Lord of hosts, how long wilt thou not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which thou hast had indignation these 60 years? And that 60 years is 70 years. And that's the roughly the period of time that we were, Jerusalem was destroyed and we were sent captive to Babylon. And that's what the Lord, by the mouth of Jeremiah, prophesied against us that he would do. So the angel, the next thing he does is he now says this, right? He basically asked the Lord openly, well, how long are you going to not have mercy on Jerusalem and Judah? Verse 13, and the Lord answered the angel, and this is all in the vision that Zechariah is seeing, by the way. And the Lord Yahweh answered the angel that talked with me with good words and comfortable words. So the angel that communed with me said unto me, cry thou, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy. And it means just that. This is why the Lord was so angry when we committed spiritual adultery by worshiping other gods. Because just like a man gets jealous when his woman is unfaithful or unloyal to him by dealing with another man, the Lord gets jealous when us as a nation, which have been likened unto a comely and delicate woman, are not faithful to the Lord by worshiping other gods or idols. So as the Lord is saying, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with great jealousy. And I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. For I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. So the Lord was upset with us, and he brought judgment upon us. But the heathen, in doing so, the heathens furthered it. They took it a step further. They made it extra. And they did this both during the time that we're talking about now, when we were captives, right? Look at the way Sennacherib treated us. Look at the way, some of these other kings treated us. But even now, right? Even now, an example of the Lord being displeased with us and putting us into captivity, then you have, for example, Esau Edom, who was like the #1 heathen who has completely forwarded the affliction. I mean, he just took the wheel and just went 200 on a 50, right? Drove off the cliff with it. So what did the Lord say in verse 16? Therefore, so as a result, thus saith the Lord, I am returned to Jerusalem with mercies. So at one point I was upset with you, I was pissed off, I was mad, I punished you, but now I'm returning with mercies. My house shall be built in it, saith the Lord of hosts, and a line shall be stretched forth upon Jerusalem. So in this time of Zechariah prophesying and receiving this vision, the Lord was confirming that the temple would be rebuilt in Jerusalem, and the line being stretched upon it. When you go into the word line, it just goes into like a measurement, which is just to say that because when you're building, you measure, right? So this is just another way of emphasizing the first point of Jerusalem being built, because them marking those measurements, meaning that they would be successful in the building. Okay. So as it says, and a line shall be stretched forth upon Jerusalem. And ultimately, this is going to happen on a grand scale, right? When the ultimate prophecy is fulfilled, when the whole of Jerusalem and the spiritual temple is built really at the return of Yahushua. Okay, but at least in this time, the Lord was confirming via Haggai, via Zechariah, via these visions, that he would be with us and we would successfully rebuild the temple. Verse 17, cry yet, saying, thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, my cities through prosperity shall yet be spread abroad, and the Lord Yahweh shall yet comfort Zion, and shall yet choose Jerusalem. And so these are the comforting words, right, that Zechariah heard the Lord answer the angel with, to say that, yeah, I drove you away, yeah, I put you in captivity, yeah, you went through a hard time, but I'm going to return, I'm going to have mercy, and I'm going to comfort you, and I'm going to bless you again. Okay? And I'm still going to choose you. Verse 18, Then lifted I up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, four horns. So remember, in this vision, he's talking with this angel. He sees the other angel by the myrtle trees. He sees the red horses, which represent other angels, reporting to that angel. And he hears the angel that he's talking with basically, make this cry out to the Lord about how long we're going to be in this condition. And then he hears this reply. And then he turns around, he moves his eyes, like it says, he lifted up his eyes. And now what he's seeing is four horns, and which these horns represent power, right? When you read, for example, in the book of Revelation, I believe is the 5th chapter, it talks about Yahushai. Let me see if I can find it. In verse 6, it talks about Yahushua having 7 horns, okay, which the number 7 represents it represents completion, but in this case, horns represent power, okay. So that 7 horns representing Yahushua having complete power and authority. Now, in this case, these 4 horns represented power, but they represented the power of the Gentiles, okay, of these heathens, as we're about to find out in the last few verses here. So Zechariah sees these 4 horns, and I said unto the angel that talked with me, what be these? So what are these? And he answered me, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem, right? And how did they do that? By putting us into captivity, right? By killing us, by committing all these atrocities against us. And that caused us to be scattered, because during the process of all of that, you had Israelites that fled or were forced to leave their customs or heritage. And this was done, as it says, by these horns, right? But these horns represented the powers of these heathens. And the Lord showed me 4 carpenters. Then said I, what come these to do? And he spake, saying, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head, which the carpenters here represent angels. Okay, and those angels were a representation of the help that the Lord was going to give us. So having been scattered and subjected under the power of these heathens, the Lord sent angels, and in this time he's going to do it again, right? One example is Daniel, the 12th chapter, right, where it says, Michael, the prince which standeth for the children of thy people, right? So the Lord sent these angels as a help for us, and we're about to read in verse 21, what's going to happen here. So it's reading verse 21 again. Then said I, what come these to do? And he spake. Now, when you actually look into the word carpenters, it's not just your average definition you would think of, right? Somebody that's like hitting a nail with a hammer. You have your charash, and it says here, craftsman, artisan, engraver, and definition 2 says skillful to destroy, warriors, figuratively warriors. Okay. So going back to Zechariah chapter 1 and 20, or 1 and 21, and then said I, what come these to do? And he spake, saying, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man, let's make sure I didn't miss anything here. Okay, yeah. So that no man did lift up his head, right? Because when we were made subject under the rule of these heathens, guess what? We lifting up your head. At what point did we get a chance to do that? We could barely even catch our breath, let alone, lift up your head to be in a state of comfortability or pride. It says here, but these are come to fray them, right? These carpenters are come to fray the horns, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, right? So that horns being the power of the Gentiles, which are these other nations, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. See? So, and when you go into the word fray, it says here, where are we at? Yeah, we have here charad, and it says to tremble, to quake, to be afraid, to be startled, to cause to tremble, to drive in terror, right? So basically these carpenters or these angels were here to deliver us, basically, right? To as it says, to fray and to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. So this was the vision that Zechariah saw, and this is why when we read up above, it mentioned the Lord speaking with those comforting words, because ultimately what the Lord was saying here is, you've been through this, I delivered you, the temple is going to be built, but ultimately I'm going to deliver you from the power of these heathens that have subjected you and scattered you and brought you to this low state. Okay, and the Lord did that at various times, right? During from around this time of Zechariah up into the future, but the ultimate time when He's going to do that finally, right? The final completion where He's going to overthrow the horn of the Gentiles is going to be in this time, when He sends back His Son Yahushua, the Messiah, along with the other angels, the heavenly host, okay, to completely fray and cast out the horns of the Gentiles. And that brings us to the end of the book of Zechariah, the first chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kudash. And until next time, Shalom.